reminder. Okay. Okay, now it's recorded. Okay. So yeah, requirement, okay, a need or expectation that is stated, generally implied or obligatory. And when a requirement has been, established in the organization should, ensure that they comply to this. Okay, because during your audit class, and you've noted that the requirements of the standard is not followed, then that means that you can raise a non-conformity. Okay. Another terminology. Okay. The question is a person or a group of people who directs and control an organization at the highest level. Who would like to answer? What is the answer here?
Top management, maybe.
All right, very good. Top management. Okay, so they are a person actually. When we talk about top management, okay, it could be a CEO, it could be the managing director or a general manager or a member of the management team. Okay, so they are a group of people directing, controlling the organization at the highest level. That is the top management. And in the standard requirements class, in class 5.1, there is a requirement for leadership and commitment. And that pertains to the top management of the organization. So when we discuss the requirements of the ISO 9001-2015, we'll be able to know and understand in detail the requirement of the top management that they should comply. Okay, top management. Now, another terminology. Okay, so the definition is the intention and direction of an organization as expressed by its top management. What is the answer?
Maybe policy or.
Okay, you are correct. Policy. Okay, so that is the definition. That is the terminology of the policy, intention and direction. Okay, so in a quality management system class, in class 5.2, there is a requirement for policy. Okay, and the top management of the organization needs to establish, implement, okay, a policy in the organization. And that policy, okay, maybe you have seen or observed in your company a policy statement, a quality policy statement that is posted in the strategic location of the organization. So those are the documented policy the organization wanted to implement in the organization, their intention, their direction, and the policy should be expressed by the top management. All right, so policy, that is the correct answer. Okay, another definition, effect of uncertainty. What is the answer? Ms. Shaima, Ms. Khulud, Ms. Zara?
Risk, maybe? Risk, maybe.
Exactly. Okay, so risk. This is the definition of the effect of uncertainty. So remember, class, that in ISO 9001-2015, this is a explicit requirement that have been introduced in the standard. Okay, risk. And it is important that the risk in the organization to be determined, okay, and provided with an action. And that is clearly written in clause 6.1.1. So we will talk about that in detail when we are in the discussion for the auditing of a management system. Okay, it's a risk. Another definition, information required to be controlled and maintained by an organization and the medium on which it is contained. So what is the answer? Anyone?
Documental information.
Documented information, correct. Okay, so that is the information. Remember, class, in the international standard requirements, you will no longer read or see the term documented procedure or documented records. Okay, so they use the term documented information. So whenever in the standard you read, okay, that the organization shall maintain documented information. That means that the standard is requiring you either a procedure, a manual, a instruction, a process flow chart, or any form of documented information, okay, that the organization shall maintain. And whenever you read the term retained documented information, that means that the international standard is requiring you to have a evidence of implementation. So that is the records. Okay, either you retain or maintain a documented information. Okay, so we will talk about that in detail later on when we are discussing the requirements of the international standard. And remember, class, that in clause 7.5, okay, there is a requirements for the control of a documented information. Another definition, class, ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended result. What is the answer?
Competency.
Competence. Very good. Okay, so that is the definition of that is the terminology for the ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended result. So in clause 7.2 of the international standards, ISO 9001, there is a requirement for competency. Okay, so we will talk about that later on as well. Another terminology that we should be familiar with. Okay, so we have here the definition. This is a set of interrelated or interacting activities which transform inputs to output. What is the answer?
Process.
Process, exactly. Okay, so those are the activities, okay, transforming from inputs to output. So it's very important, class, that we understand that a process is now being used in the international standard. Can you give an example of a process?
For example, process of procurement, it needs some bills or proposals of all the prices. Then it would go under check, for example, process, which is the best, for example, licensor, or what is the best cost to be take over, and then to finalize the process with, for example, the winner of this procurement process.
Exactly. All right. So that is an example of a process. So remember, class, that in a management system, there are a lot of processes. You know, we have the main process, and then we have sub processes. Like, say, for example, just like what Madam have told us, okay, we have the procurement process. Under procurement process, there are sub processes. You know, like, say, for example, supplier registration. Okay, so that is the sub process of procurement. Okay, supplier evaluation, supplier performance evaluation. All right, so those are an example of a process. Any other example of a process aside from procurement?
Yes, there is also HR, human resources.
Okay.
When they have a new joiner or a new employee, there's step of process of registration him, giving him the like office, the account, and this stuff. So they will follow up another sub processes by another departments.
Right, exactly. Okay, so a human resource process. Okay, and there are sub processes. Okay, starting from recruitment. Okay, employee onboarding, employee induction. Okay, training and development. okay, offboarding, resignation process, termination process, employee performance evaluation process. So those are an example of sub-processes of an HR. Okay, so those example of processes, okay, that we have given needs to be understood by the organization. Okay, and as an organization, there should have a documented processes of those sample process. Like, say, for example, HR process. Okay, when we talk about HR process, okay, either the organization to maintain a documented information for that, like a procedure for human resources. Okay, and then there are procedure also for employee induction, training and development, competency process, things like this. Okay, so either you wanted to maintain a procedure or a process flow chart, that is acceptable as well. So the standard is not saying that you should, you know, establish or document this in a form of a procedure, in a process flow chart, or in a work instruction, or in a guidelines. It's up to the organization to decide whether that process, how they will document. Okay, next. This is a set of interrelated or interacting elements of an organization to establish policies and objectives in processes to achieve those objectives. What is the answer? Anyone? What do you think is the answer of this definition? What terminology is this? Anyone, class, who knows the answer for this terminology, this definition? What terminology is this?
Not outsourced, لا, not outsourced.
Actually, what is the question? I didn't get.
Yeah.
Set
So
of
basically,
the-
Mr. Hossein, these are all terminology, and you need to map to this definition. So this definition, what is the answer? You can choose from this terminologies.
Which definition you are talking about right now?
A set of interrelated or interacting elements of the organization to establish policies and objectives and processes to achieve those objectives.
Yes.
Anyone? What is the answer?
Oh, actually, what is the question? So
The question is, you need to select from this terminology, okay, for this definition. So the definition is a set of interrelated or interacting elements. Okay, so what terminology is this? What term that is suited for this as per the international standard requirements?
to interrelate is interested parties, because we have to interrelate all the parties for to achieve the objectives.
Interested parties. Okay. Any other answer? Because when we say interested parties, they are a person or an organization that can affect, you know, or be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or a activity. Ms. Zara, Ms. Kulud, any other answer do you think here?
Maybe management system, but it's a system, not.
All right, it's a management system. You know, having a management system basically in the organization, there are elements, you know, interacting to each other. You know, there are interrelated to each other. Okay, and then you establish a policy, you set a objective, you develop processes, ensuring that these objectives are achieved. So that is a management system. Okay, another definition: result to be achieved. What is the answer?
I think objective.
All right, objective. You know, in clause 6.2 of the international standard class, there is a requirement for an objective. Okay, an objective that the organization should set. Okay, and the objective should be a SMART objective. So let us find out later on the requirements of an objective. And when you are auditing this clause, 6.2, what evidences or documented information that you should look for, okay, to ensure that the company you are auditing is complying to the requirements of the international standard. Okay. Another definition: make an arrangement where an external organization perform part of an organization's function or processes. What is the answer?
Outsource.
Right. So the answer is outsource. Okay. Sometimes, in the organization, we may need to outsource resources. Like say, for example, a manpower resources. If there is no competent person in the organization, you may need to outsource this from a third-party company. Okay, or like say, for example, the maintenance building of the company. If no one is doing the maintenance, you may wanted to outsource this from another company. All right. And whenever you are making an arrangement to an external organization, it is important that you manage and control their activities. All right. So it's very important that that is in place as part of your process as an organization. Okay. And then, of course, we do have another definition here. This is the business environment, a combination of internal and external factors and conditions that can have an effect on an organization's approach to its products, service, and investments, as well as interested parties. What is the answer? Any idea?
Documented information.
Documented information.
Maybe context of.
So when we
Or
say
context of the organization.
remember, class, the definition of documented information: information required to be controlled and maintained. Correct? So that is documented information. But this one is related to the business environment of the organization.
Context of the organization.
All right, very good. Okay, so when we talk about business environment, when we talk about internal and external issues, that is the context of the organization. All right, this is actually the first main clauses of the international standard, clause number 4, context of the organization. And it is a requirement actually that the organization to understand their issues, whether this is internal or an external issue. Okay, so there are a lot actually terms and definitions that you auditor should know and understand, and those other terminologies are listed in the vocabulary, okay, of the international standards. So just go through and browse your standard. Okay, so if you take a look at the standard class, okay, like say for example, this is the international standard for quality management system. And if you open the clauses for the terms and definition, just move on to the requirements of the standard here in section number 3. Okay, the purpose of this document, the terms and definition apply to ISO 9001-2015. So there is another international standard pertaining to the terms and definition. Okay, and this is publicly available in the website of the ISO. All right, so just go through with this and you'll be able to understand in detail about the terms
This
And
document already
definition.
shared with us, right? Or we should search for it?
Let me try to pull this out for you, and we will publish that in your account. But anyhow, if you wanted to know more about this, you can always search from the ISO website. It's readily available.
Okay.
All right. So any other question, class, clarification before we move on to the next topic?
Go ahead.
All right. All right. So now the requirements of ISO 9001 2015. You know, class, as an auditor, it is important that you know and understand the requirements of the international standard, because this will be your basis when you are doing an audit, okay, in an organization. So let us talk about each of the requirements of the international standard for 9001 2015. Just like what I told you a while ago, all right, we have clauses of the international standard. So we have clause number 4, okay, context of the organization. We have clause number 5, leadership. Clause number 6, planning. Clause number 7, support. Clause number 8, operation. Clause number 9, performance evaluation. And clause number 10, improvement. Now, what we're going to do, class, is to discuss the standard requirement. So just like what I have shown now, okay, in the international standard, this is the international standard for ISO 9001 2015. And in the table of contents of the standard, you will see here, okay, the clauses of the international standard. Okay, so we have the scope, normative references, the terms and definition, and the clauses, starting from number 4, context of the organization. So this is the main clauses of the international standard, and there is a sub clauses. So the sub clauses would be, for example, in 4.1, understanding the organization in its context, understanding the needs and expectation of interested parties, determining the scope of quality management system and the quality management system in its processes. Okay, so there are sub clauses in here. So the clauses so and so you will find out in here. Okay, so that is the structure of this international standard. Now, as an auditor, it is important that you know and understand the clause and subclauses of the standard. Okay, I understand that, of course, at the beginning, it's going to be very difficult for you to at least memorize this clause and subclauses. But during your implementation or during your audit on your processes of the organization, you will get to know all of these things. You know, before when I started learning about these international standards, I find it, you know, difficult to understand all of this. And then when I do this, you know, when I started to practice doing an audit, you know, for almost every day, this is like my thing already. And I was able to know and understand in detail the requirement. You know, even say, for example, I am sleeping and then you tap me and you ask me what is clause 6.2, I will tell you immediately it's objective, you know, because it's a routine already. So just like for you, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, slowly, you may need to fully understand, you know, the clauses, the subclauses, as well as the requirements of the international standard. And that's going to be very helpful for you. So when it comes to the examination, don't you worry, because during the examination, this standard is open. So it's just easy for you to go through and browse each of the requirements of the standard. So the main thing here is that when you do an examination, it is important that you know and you understand, you have the awareness of what the particular clauses or sub-clauses requires you to do, or what evidences you should look for when you are doing an audit. Okay, so moving on. So starting from clause 4.1, okay, this is now the context of the organization. Okay, so as you can see in here, this is the main clause, and we have the sub-clauses. And in the sub-clauses, these are the requirements, which we will be discussing one by one. Okay, so and so for these sub-clauses, we have some requirements in here. All right, so I just open the international standard for you so that you will be able to have an understanding, okay, while we are discussing the slide. Is there a question or is there any other clarification, class? All clear?
Yes.
Yes, clear.
All right, now I'll go back now to the slides. Okay, here. I hope you do have a pen and paper with you, class, so that you can take down whatever points that I am discussing, so that you will have a guide, you know, during the discussion for each of the requirements of the standards. Now, let us talk about clause number 4, context of the organization. Okay, a while ago we defined context of the organization as the business environment. Okay, the combination of internal and external factors and conditions that can have an effect on the organization's approach to its products, services, and investments and interested parties. All right, now, what is the requirements of this international standard? Remember, class, that while you audit this clause, okay, context of the organization, as an auditor, you should have a full understanding of the organization's business environment. Okay, like so for example, the company is a construction industry company. Okay, you should know what is the context of the organization. You should be aware of the issues internally and externally. Okay, and while auditing this clause, okay, who is your auditee here? Could be the entire organization. And normally, when I audit this clause, I, you know, I interview the top management of the organization to understand in detail the products and services of the organization, you know, to know more about the company. In each of the company class, they may have issues, and it will vary depending on the business environment, depending on the products and services, depending on the industry that they are in, you know. So what are those issues internally and externally? Okay, so when we talk about issues, class, sometimes we have a thinking that this is something negative because it's an issue. Okay, but the standard, when we talk about issue, this means either this is a positive issue or a negative issue. Okay, internal and external to the organization. Okay, so that is the context of the organization. Now, internal issues. Okay, so what are the issues affecting the quality management system of the organization? It might arise from a culture of the organization. You know, sometimes because of the culture, you know, it's very diverse. You know, a company may be having different culture, you know, depending on the people working there. Okay, and it's important that the organization to know and understand the culture of the organization, the performance of the organization, whether the policies, procedures is implemented. An issue can arise from there. And the organization needs to understand what those issues are, positively and negatively. Okay? External issues could arise from legal, in a legal point of view. Like, say, for example, there is a new legal requirements the organization should adapt and implement. Okay? Like, say, for example, trade license of the company. It's a mandatory requirement to operate a business. Is there an issue related to this? Like, say, for example, if the organization failed to renew the trade license, there is a negative impact within that issue. So what the organization should do to ensure that the trade license of the company is, regularly renewed on time. You may need to do some kind of monitoring or review of that issues. All right. Or say, for example, an issue related to technological. Like, say, for example, you may wanted to adopt new technology to be used in the production of your products that you will be using to enhance your process improvement. Like, so for example, in IT company, you may wanted to issue software like this to monitor easily and trace the information and data that you wanted to monitor. Okay, is there an issue related to that, positively and negatively, that needs to be identified as an organization? The market. Nowadays, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe the business operation has been, affected. All right, so that can also be an issue. And remember, class, that these issues internally and externally needs to be monitored and reviewed. So the international standard didn't say that it is a requirement to document all of these issues. But it is important, okay, that these are documented part of your process. Because, like, say, for example, when you are auditing a company and they don't know what are their issues, okay, so you can raise this as a finding, an observation, or an opportunity for improvement. Okay, but you cannot raise this as a non-conformity, especially if the issues are not documented, because the standard didn't say so that they need to document all of this. But if your own procedure as a company says that in your manual you stated that these issues needs to be documented, then that needs to be documented. Okay, now there are methods, there are forms on how you will identify the issues of the organization. Sometimes organization may need to do a pestle analysis, a pestle analysis, like they need to do a analysis with regards to the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environment. Or say, for example, during the business meeting of the top management of the organization, they do some business planning, okay, strategy development, what they should do. Or some organization, they do SWOT analysis, SWOT analysis to understand the strength of the company, the weakness of the company, the opportunities, the threat, okay, of the company. They need to understand all of this, because that strength of your company now can be your weakness tomorrow, or that weakness today can be your strength if they do something about it. Okay, the threat you are facing right now can be a threat that can hamper your business. All right, so that is an example of the context of the organization. So any question, class? Any clarification?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, madam.
For better understanding, that's mean auditor should know about each issue in the organization, and they will provide some solutions, or they should be aware of the solutions? Because I didn't get the idea here actually
All right. It's a very
regarding
good
market
question.
and like that. They know, of course, what is the market, but should top management should answer all these questions, and is provider, is auditor provide a solution or better best practices to solve these issues?
All right. So basically, you are asking your auditee, which is the top management, for example, to understand the issue of the organization. So as an auditor, you are assessing these issues in the company, how they determine, how they identify the issues in the organization, because there should have a process. Like say, for example, as an auditor, okay, I may do some kind of an interview to my auditee, which is the top management in this particular clause, So like say, for example, Madam General Manager, you know, uh, please tell me how you identify, how you determine the issues internally in the organization. You ask them question, and then they will give you answer. Okay, so based on their answer, you need to ask further question to understand really if there is a process in place related to determining, related to monitoring and reviewing all of those issues, either positive or negative. Like say, for example, they told you, you know what, one of the issues that we are facing right now is the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so that is an issue either internally or externally. So, okay, so tell me more about these COVID-19 issues in the organization. So you have to ask them question, for example, and they will tell you a lot of things about COVID-19. You know what? Because of this COVID-19, many are infected. One employee, for example, is infected with COVID-19, and then suddenly, of course, the operations of the company will be affected. All right, so they will tell you information about these issues, and then you will have to say, for example, ask some more question. Now, how do you monitor and review all of these issues? What controls, what management you do to ensure that the operation will not be hampered because of COVID-19? And then they will tell you more about COVID-19 controls. Currently, we are doing work from home. All are given an access to do Skype meeting just to ensure that the operation is continuous. But some of the workers, of course, are still coming to the office to do their job and function, but then they ensure that they are following the government guidelines and precautions, like say, for example, maintaining 2 meter social distancing, wearing a face mask, etc. Now, you're while doing the interview, you need to ask questions challenging them whether how they comply based on their answer. Now, okay, so can you give me an example or any evidences that you are doing this? So they will tell you, like say, for example, you know what, we conducted an awareness training about COVID-19. Okay, so can you show me the evidence that you conducted the COVID-19 awareness? Now they will present you, for example, an evidence, a training records, for example, that these people attended COVID-19. They will show you some photos that controls are implemented, posters are things like this. Okay, so that's how you do an audit. You ask question, they will answer, and based on their answer, you verify further. Okay, so that is a audit trail. And say, for example, okay, in their documentation, it is not written clearly, okay, what are the things that they should do, then you can recommend. Okay, so this is a finding that I think you can look for to improve your process. Okay, and then you can go ahead and tell something about that. All right, so that is just an example of a issue. Okay, internally and externally, of course, in our organization, there are a lot of internal and external issues that you can assess and verify further to understand in detail the context or the business environment of the organization. Okay, sometimes in an organization, okay, there are documentations that they wanted to demonstrate, to show as well, to demonstrate their compliance to this. I will show you an example. By the way, class, while doing the discussion, I wanted to show you some example. But this example are documentation of a company. So please don't mind the name of the company. But I just wanted to show you for your reference and understanding. Okay, so let me show you this one, an example, so that we have the understanding about these clauses of the standard. Okay, now I am showing you a sample issues. Okay, um, some organization do a SWOT analysis. I hope you can see my screen. Do you?
Yes.
Okay, now, so this is an example of or an organization doing a monitoring of their analysis. Like, say, for example, during your audit for this clause, you ask them, is there any methods you do to understand your issues in the company? That's your question to the auditee. And then the auditee answered, we have a lot of exercises we've done to determine and identify those issues. An example, for example, is that we're doing a SWOT exercise. Okay, so that's what your auditee told you. Now, okay, so you're doing a SWOT analysis. Can you show me the SWOT analysis result that you have conducted? And then they will show you, for example, a evidence, okay, that this is the things that they have done, okay, a SWOT analysis. So this is the report of our SWOT analysis. And one of the issues that we identified is the pandemic of coronavirus, okay? So in here, we have an issue that, because of this COVID-19, our clients, the operation, or the supply that we need for the business may be affected. And the issue is a high priority for us because this is a threat for our organization. Okay, and then they documented also the controls that they are they have documented also the controls that they are doing. Okay, the control is that following regulations and procedures issued by the government, and they have a review details of on a need basis every time. So as an auditor, you may wanted to furtherly verify, okay, how they are implementing the controls, how they review this. Can you show me some evidences of you following the government regulations about COVID-19? Like, say, for example, we have a regulations that every 14 days the employee should have a test, a PCR test, which should be positive, right? So it's a government regulation. So how the organization is doing this, since this is a threat for them. Okay, so you may wanted to check some more evidences with regards to that. Okay, so there are other issues in the organization, like, say, for example, an opportunities for them, related to requirements of a project, like a number of requirements to register or acquire accreditation and licenses from government and semi-government regulators and private entities. that may delay commencement or execution of a project if not fulfilled in time. And of course, this is a opportunity for the organization to do a constant monitoring, okay, constant tracking of the licenses, and they have the opportunity to improve its commitment to comply with the laws and regulations. So another issue the organization should, follow and monitor as well. Ms. Shaima, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Just my question is, so SWOT analysis will be done by the auditor or by the organization?
By the organization. So the job of the auditor is just to assess and verify the implementation, how they do that.
Of the SWOT analysis, right?
Yeah, yeah. SWOT analysis
Okay.
should be conducted by the organization, and the auditor is just verifying how they're doing this.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, great. Okay, so basically the idea is that there is a requirements of the standard, and you as an auditor is checking and verifying how the organization is doing that, how they are implementing that. And if you feel that, for example, as an auditor, that is in non-compliance or a non-conformity to the requirements of the standard, okay, you can raise a finding, either a non-conformity, major or minor, an observation, or an opportunity for improvement. Okay, so like say for example, the organization is not doing a SWOT analysis. Okay, so they don't know how to determine and identify a particular issue that they have in the organization. Now, you as an auditor can recommend the organization, maybe it would be worthwhile for an organization to carry out a SWOT analysis to identify their issues internally and externally. Now you are raising a non-conformity, and it's the organization can now provide an action to correct this in compliance to the requirements of the international standard. Okay, so basically the organization is establishing, developing, and implementing the requirement of the standard. The auditor is checking, verifying, and assessing whether they are implementing the requirements of the standard. All right, it's clear, Ms. Shaima?
Clear.
Okay, very good. Any other question, class? Any other clarification about the issues? All right. So remember, class, these issues needs to be monitored and reviewed as an organization. Okay. Sometimes the organization may document these issues in the manual of the company. I'll show you an example of a manual. So this is an example of a quality manual. Okay. So in the quality manual of the company, they have wrote a lot of things about their company and all. Okay, even they have conducted a documentation with regards to the clause. Like for example, this is the context of the organization. Okay, and they referred a document about their internal issues and external issues. So as an auditor, you may wanted to go ahead and take a look at this documentation, part of your document review. Okay, to ensure that this is implemented or not. Okay, another methodology where you can assess how the organization is identifying, the business environment is, by interviewing the employees. Like say for example, you may wanted to check with them whether they know the vision of the company, the mission of the company, what is the company is all about, just to understand, the business of the organization, the business environment of the organization. Some company to monitor and review this, these are conveyed via the minutes of the meeting, during the discussion of the issues of the organization. Okay, so that is how you will audit this clause. Okay, so check all the related evidences and documentations with regards to the business environment, with regards to the issues of the organization. Any question, class? Any other clarification that you wanted to ask? Please feel free to raise that. All clear, Ms. Zara, Ms. Khulud,
Yes.
Ms. Shaima, and Mr. Hossein?
All clear.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Now, moving on to the next clause, okay, the subclause for the needs and expectation of interested parties. Okay, so this is the subclause, clause 4.2. Okay, so when we talk about interested parties, class, okay, this is the person, a group of person that can be affected, right, by or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or an activity. And what is the requirements of the international standard in this clause? So basically, class, the requirement, okay, is that the organization to determine the relevant interested parties of the organization. You know, what is the requirements? Okay, and it is important that the requirements are monitored, it is reviewed, okay, by the organization. Now, so who are the interested parties of the organization? Let us start with internal interested parties. Who is the interested parties of the company internally? Can you give an example?
Employee was working.
The top management.
Employee. Yes. Employees is an internal interested parties of the organization. That is correct. Now, once you identified that employee is an interested parties of the organization, okay, you may wanted to check, okay, the needs and expectation of employee. So what is the needs and expectation of employee? Let's say, for example, Ms. Khulud, you are working for your company. What is your needs and expectation with them?
They have to receive the training before starting the work.
Right.
To know their work perfectly, to receive their salary, to be in a perfect team.
Truly.
Like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So those are an example of your needs, your expectation from the company. You know, like say, for example, training and development. That's what I need for me to be able to work at the company, right? Salary on time. That is my needs and expectation. Safe workplace, motivation. All right. So those are an example of needs and expectation. All right. What else? Any other interested parties internally aside from employee? Any other interested parties that you can identify internally?
You mean other than employee?
Yes, other than employees.
Could be contractor.
Contractor. So they are a external interested parties. Yeah, internal within the organization.
The other sections are the interested parties because we are interacting with them and fulfilling their requirements, supporting them, such as logistic or any other activities.
Okay.
Agreeing with the internal departments. One
Right.
department with another department.
Exactly, correct. Okay, so in department, for example, HR department, who is the interested parties of HR departments? the other departments, like for example, the employee of a procurement, the employee of operation, the procurement of the employee of IT, etc. And they have their needs and expectation that HR department should, provide to them. Okay, so that is another interested parties, correct? Okay, what else? Any other interested parties internally?
Our top management.
Top management, exactly. Right. So what is the needs and expectation of the top management?
To achieve whatever the goals they set, we have to achieve that.
Okay. So basically, top management set goals, right? They set how do you call this? They set some kind of a targets. Okay, so that is their needs and expectation. So as you can see in here, class, okay, there is an example of the interested parties, the needs and expectation of interested parties. Okay, so an employee, for example, or a worker. So their needs and expectation is job satisfaction, career growth, respect, defined roles and responsibility, okay, training and development, providing means of protection and protective clothing, PPE, like this. So this is the needs and expectation of interested parties. How they monitor and review this? Meetings with the staff to hear their feedbacks, or provide feedback channels for the staff through a regular meeting, or a positive feedback received from a satisfied clients, or for the good performance. Remember, class, that in this clause 4.2, there is a requirements for you to review and monitor, okay, those information. This one, monitor and review information about these interested parties and their relevant requirements. So in here, in the document that I have showed you, okay, this is how they do the monitoring. Now, your role as an auditor is that, you may wanted to do an interview with your auditee. Ask them, who is your interested parties? And if they say, for example, these interested parties are documented in a document like this, okay, you may wanted to ask them, can you show me that document where your interested parties are listed? And they will show you this. Okay, and when they show you this, of course, as an auditor, you may wanted to go ahead and check, verify further what this is all about. Okay, so they have written here monitoring and review methods that they are meeting with their employee to hear their feedbacks. So is this implemented? Can you show me the evidence that you are doing a meeting with your employees? Okay, and they will show you the minutes of the meeting. And if it's not, if there is no minutes of the meeting, you can raise a non-conformity. You can say that, as documented in the interested party list, one of the monitoring and review methods is to meet the people. However, okay, upon verification, there was no evidence that the meeting has been conducted. And now the auditee will have the opportunity to improve the process. Maybe on their next meeting, they may need to secure a mom, a minutes of the meeting conducted, so that there is an evidences that they did this meeting. Or say, for example, okay, to know their feedback, organization is doing an employee survey, employee engagement survey, to understand their performance, their feedbacks, okay, what is their comments about the company, etc. So that can also be documented in the form of engagement survey. And as an auditor, if they said that they're doing this engagement survey, you may want to go ahead and take a look whether the engagement survey is actually conducted or it was, carried out. Okay. Now, another example of an interested parties is the top management, the business owner, shareholders, and their needs and expectation, of course, is profitability, growth of the organization, employee engagement, honest and quality work. Okay. And this is what they are expecting as a top management. Okay. And of course, objectives and targets. So they set a objectives and targets. You may wanted to check whether that objective is actually set and documented as part of their process. Okay, that is for internal interested parties. Now, let us talk about external interested parties. Who is the external interested parties of the company? Can you give an example?
Contractors.
Oh.
Suppliers.
Correct. Suppliers, contractors. Now, what is the needs and expectation of your supplier?
Provide us the service that the organization required from them. Yeah, or any, if they are, for example, technology provider, so they provide us with the technology. It depends on the service that they are providing.
Exactly. All right. So basically, your supplier, their needs and expectation is that for you to provide what you require, what you purchase, right? So example of this for the suppliers here, external provider, contractors, or suppliers, or subcontractors. Of course, good communication with regards to the purchase requirements, the accurate specification, they need that. I say, for example, I need an IT product like this, like that. Okay, you need to give them an accurate, a specific requirement. Okay, and once you gave that to them, they will provide you what you require. Okay, accurate specification. Okay, terms and condition. What is the terms and condition? That is their needs and expectation. They expect you to do this, do that. Okay, on-time payment. Of course, supplier wanted to get paid on time. Okay, so once the product or the service has been delivered based on your agreement, okay, if you agreed to pay this at the end of the month, they are expecting you to pay or receive, they are expecting you that they will be receiving the payment end of the month. Okay, and then of course, how do you monitor and review that? Okay, through regular meetings in communication with them, external providers performance evaluation, okay, the audit reports, any progress reports to be submitted by the external provider. Okay, so that's how the external providers needs and expectation is all about. Any other external interested parties, class, that you can identify aside from suppliers, contractors?
Yeah, government rules and regulations. The governments, whatever they have a rule, so we have to follow that one. So that is also one external party which we have to observe what they are, their rules and regulation, that we are fulfilling that one, such as RTA, telecom companies which are monitoring us. So it's our job to make our things regarding to them.
Truly, exactly. As an organization, you are governed by a specific requirements from the regulatory authorities. Like say, for example, just like what Mr. Rosin have given as an example, they are in a telecom industry. They are governed by the TRA, Telecommunication Regulations Authority, correct? So as an organization, they have to comply to that requirements. Okay, and it's important that as an organization, okay, just like this, an example, we have the regulatory bodies. Regulatory bodies could be a local regulatory authorities, in the Emirates level, a federal requirements, or an international bodies regulatory requirements. So what is their needs and expectation? Of course, compliance to the requirements of the regulatory bodies, compliance to the legal requirements. All right. So that is their needs and expectation. Now, how do you do monitoring and review? Okay, so regular checking and review of the website of that particular government. You do internal audit to assess the compliance to the requirements. Okay, so that is also an example of how you do the monitoring and the review of the regulatory requirements of the government. Now, as an auditor, okay, you may need to go ahead and take a look how the organization is complying to these requirements of the regulatory bodies. Okay, so check. Okay, you may wanted to check the license, the licenses issued or any certification issued by that particular agency, just to confirm and verify that they are following, that they are in compliance to the requirements of the standard. Okay, so another one example of an interested parties is the client, your customer. Okay, so what is the needs and expectation of your clients? Quality products, okay, quality service at a competitive price, on-time delivery, turnover, prompt response. Okay, so those are an example of the needs and expectation of the client. Okay, so like, so for example, how they do the monitoring and review that customer satisfaction survey, records of complaint. Okay, so as an auditor, you may wanted to go ahead and take a look. Okay, the complaint raised by the customer, the client, how many are closed, how many are still open. Okay, what the organization did about this, how did they monitor this, how did they review this. So that is the needs and expectation of your interested parties, internally and externally. And remember, class, that part of your role or duty as an auditor is to assess how your auditing, how that organization, understand the needs and expectation of their interested parties. And of course, for you to be able to know that is through interview and checking, cross-checking with relevant documented information that is available in the organization. Okay, so any question, any clarification, class? Any question, please? All clear?
Yeah, all clear.
Okay, very good. So if there is no other question, let's move on to the next subclause of the context of the organization. Okay, so we do have another class, the scope of the quality management system. Okay, so when we talk about the scope of the quality management system class, this is the determination of the boundaries and applicability of the management system. Okay, and remember, class, that when you are determining on the scope of the management system, you may wanted to understand the internal and external issues that was referred to in clause 4.1, as well as the requirements of the interested parties in clause 4.2, as well as the products and services of the organization. Okay, now remember, class, that the scope of the company's quality management system shall be available and maintained as documented information. Okay, in the standard, class, if you read, okay, the word maintained documented information, that means that the standard is requiring you to have a documentation for the scope. Because during your audit, like say for example, the scope of the certification is not clear, it is not documented, okay, then you can raise a non-conformity. That means it's a major non-conformity because the scope is not documented. All right. So what are the things that you should include in the scope? Okay, it shall state, okay, the types of products and services covered, and there should have a justification for any of the international standard requirements that the organization determines not applicable to the scope of the quality management system. Okay, so like say for example, here, let me give you an example of a scope of the management system. Okay, this is where this company have documented the scope of the management system. Okay, so as you can see here in clause 4.3, this is how they documented the scope. Okay, so since this company is a contracting company, okay, in a construction industry, okay, so they have documented the scope in here, like the scope of EGC quality management system covers the following activities in Al Ain, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. And the scope is all kind building projects contracting. Okay, so this is the scope of the certification. Again, as an auditor, you may need to assess and verify, okay, the scope. And the scope is the boundaries, the applicability of the management system. Like, say, for example, a company may have a branch in Dubai. They have a branch in Abu Dhabi. They have a branch in Canada. They have a branch in Hong Kong. Okay, now, does the certification of the quality management system applies to all of the branch? And if it applies, you may need to clearly document that in your manual or in any other documents that is controlled. Or say, for example, the scope is only Abu Dhabi. Then the scope of the Abu Dhabi branch should be clearly defined. And what is the scope statement? Okay, like say, for example, contracting services. Okay, only here in Abu Dhabi. Then the scope, the certification is only for Abu Dhabi. All right, and that should be clearly written. Now, in the standard class, okay, there are requirements that may not be applicable to a process. Okay, so let me show you the clause requirements. For example, here, okay, this is the clauses of the international standard. At times, an organization may not carry some activity that is not applicable to them. Like say, for example, some organization, especially service industry, like say, for example, a training company. A training company may not need to use equipment requiring calibration. Okay, because they're just plainly doing some training about lead auditor courses, for example. So equipment requiring calibration is not applicable to them. So if that is the case, the organization may need to exclude that requirements. And we have that requirements in this clause, 7.1.5. So in this case, this clause is not applicable to them. And if it's not applicable, that needs to be clearly stated in the scope of the management system in the manual, saying that the clause 7.1.5 is not applicable and what is the justification. You need to write that because the company only provides training and they are not using any equipment requiring calibration. Some industry, for example, okay, they are not doing design and development. Okay, so we have here the clause 8.3. Sample companies, for example, don't have design and development, like service industry for wholesale, for example. They're just selling um, they're just selling computers, for example, IT products. They're not doing design, they're not doing development of products, like just like what manufacturing industry or construction industry is doing. Okay, so in that case, this clause 8.3 can be excluded as part of the scope statement of the organization, and again, that needs to be written in the manual of the organization. What is the justification? So you can add in here the justification why that requirements of the international standard is excluded. Okay, so that needs to be documented. Okay, so you can add in here, for example, that the clause, etc., is not applicable because of so and so. So that needs to be added in the scope statement. Now, when you are auditing this class, you need to understand the organization's processes and services. Okay, because say for example, you feel that this service industry doing wholesale and trading, design and development is not applicable, then why this clause is not stated in the scope statement? And if it is so, then you may need to raise a non-conformity finding. All right. So, or say, for example, the scope is not documented in any form of documentation, you can raise a major non-conformity as well. And you will say in your statement findings that the scope is not documented as a requirement to be maintained by the organization as stated in clause 4.3 of ISO 9001-2015 standard requirements. All right, any question? Any clarification? Any question, class? I hope you are still there.
Yeah, we are with you.
Okay.
Yes,
No
yes.
questions.
All is good.
All is
Thank
good. Okay, so no question, no clarification in this clause. Okay, next. We have the last clause for the context of the organization. We have the quality management system and its processes. Now, what is the requirement of this clause? In here clause, the organization shall establish, shall implement, maintain, and continually improve the quality management system, including the processes needed in their interaction. Okay, and the organization needs to maintain documented information to support the operation of its processes. Could be a manual, a plan, a procedure, a work instruction, a method statement, okay, a quality plan, and records. And when we talk about the records, these are the documented information to have confidence that the processes are being carried out as planned. The quality records, the quality reports, inspection results, any minutes of the meeting available, etc. Okay, so in here, in this class, okay, when we talk about processes, as I told you a while ago, Madam Shaima, Madam Khalud, Madam Zara, and Hussein talk about many processes, which is actually true. There are processes available in the organization, and that processes needs to be documented, because that needs to be maintained as documented information. And of course, you need to provide an evidence that this processes is being implemented. Okay, that means that in this clause, this covers all the processes in the organization. And that processes needs to be assessed and verified by the auditor. You should check all of these things, whether, okay, these processes have an input and output as expected. Okay, what is the interaction and sequence of these processes? And then, of course, the criteria and methods, including the monitoring, the measurement, okay, the performance indicators that is needed to ensure that the operation and control of the processes is effective. Okay, so whether these processes have resources, okay, is available, okay, there is a roles and responsibilities assigned for these processes, and of course these processes have been identified with the risks and opportunities. Like, for example, human resource process. Of course, in the human resource process, there are risks and opportunities. And the organization needs to identify what is the risk and opportunities of human resource process. And as an auditor, you may wanted to look up and review the risk of human process. Where is it documented? How did they identify this? What is the control? What is the measure introduced to control these processes? Okay, and then of course they need to evaluate the processes and implement any changes needed, ensuring that these are achieved as their intended results. Okay, so that is the processes in the organization, and that is what is required in these international standards. Okay, so is there any other questions? So we have completed the clause 4 for the context of the organization. Okay, so that's how you do an audit. So remember, class, that as an auditor, you need to ask for evidences. You need to ask your auditee evidences of implementation for all of this. Okay, and that is part of your role and duty as a auditor. All right. So any question, any clarification about context of the organization?
I have general question about the audit.
Hmm.
There's any difference between the audit conducted for a certain organization and the one conducted for the project?
Okay. Okay. So for example, certification audit, this is something that you conducted, the certifying body conducted an audit, and they will issue you certification. So when it comes to a project audit, like say for example, internally in the organization, there is an auditor, a quality auditor, for example, internal to the organization, may do a project audit, based on the contracts, based on the quality plan, based on the method statement. Okay, so those documentation is required for you to do a project audit, like in the construction industry, for example. So there are a lot of documentation, and internally you have an audit, okay, done there, and you are assessing whether those documents, those policies, those plans are actually implemented. Something similar to the certification audit, of course, it is just that it's a type of audit where you do an internal audit within your organization, okay, based on the criteria, which is the criteria is the project audit. But for certification audit, this is the whole organization you are auditing in compliance to the requirements of the international standards. Okay? Is it clear?
Yeah, clear. So all what we talked today, it is related to certification of an audit for a certain organization, يعني, to take the ISO.
Yes, exactly. Covering the whole aspects of an audit. Okay, that is what this lead auditor is all about. Because even if you are, say, for example, doing an internal audit within your organization, it's the same process because you will still look at the ISO standards as well as other aspects of documentation of the organization, like your method statement, the contract, the agreements, the policies, the procedures of the company. It's still the same look and feel of doing an audit, but the difference is that the type of an audit, because the type of an audit for doing a project is internal audit, which is done internally by own organization. But for the third-party audit, which is a certifying audit, is that someone not from the organization, okay, it's an external party, will come and does the audit in the organization.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay. Any other question, class, or clarification? Okay, so if there is no other question, class, or clarification, okay, so we'll end the class today. Okay, we have completed the topic for today, and next week, okay, we will continue the discussion of the clause number 5, clause number 6, clause number 7, clause number 8, clause number 9, and clause number 10. Okay, and we will do some exercises and examination also, like a quiz next week with regards to what we have discussed today. All right, so we will end the class now. If there is any other question or clarification, please feel free. Anything else, Mr. Hussein, Ms. Shaima?
No.
Ms. Zara?
No, thank you.
Okay, so next week class, okay, I'll see you at 9:30 in the morning. All right, and we will continue the discussion of the requirements of the international standard, and we will have a quiz as well. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You may have a good day ahead of you.
Same to you.
Thank
Bye
you.
on.
You too.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.